Mark Pennycook saying Scott Brown would be the right man for the job. Come to Saints, Scott. Paul counters though with don't touch it, mate. You're doing well at Ayr. You could be swapping positions soon. Trust the guys who run your own club. They've got more money than St Johnstone can dream of. And John Berry, don't think he'll go there. A lot going on in the background at Ayr just now. A lot of money being spent. I think the Hibs job comes up in a couple of years. That would be good. Scott Brown, can you see him being tempted by St Johnstone if that offer was to be made?
I've got to say, Daniel, I just made the point about staying down in these parts and the buzz around Kilmarnock for Derek McInnes. It's exactly the same down in there for Scott Brown. They've really doing a great job. There's a lot going on, as has been mentioned. Behind the scenes, the club are doing a lot of great work. They've got the new stand, the new sort of hospitality stand and all that opened at the start of the season when Celtic were down. There's such a real feel-good factor around there as well. And a real hope that they can make a real push for promotion this year. I mean, I know it would have been cited as a bit of a long shot in spells last season, but they've started great. But again, it's only a small sample size. But anybody you speak to or anybody you hear, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that Scott Brown is coming across brilliantly as a coach and a manager. I don't think that shocks anyone, and I think it's just a matter of time before he steps up the levels and
goes up to a top flight team. Hibs is obviously one that people would point to, of course it is. St Johnstone, I don't know so much about in terms of whether that would be attractive for him. That's almost something only Scott can answer, but he's certainly from the evidence of what we're seeing and what we're hearing and what he's doing just now, he's more than capable of taking them on.
Keith, see, I don't mean to disrespect St Johnstone at all, but if I was Scott Brown, I'm not sure I'd be leaving to go to St Johnstone. Is that fair? Or
you're potentially throwing yourself into a world of pain, aren't you? Given the kind of state that St Johnstone have got themselves into over the last couple of years. I tend to be more in agreement with Swanee on this one. I think that, and if you look at Scott Brown, the manager, he has shown a willingness to work his way up. He's gone down south, and okay, that ended badly. There was a change of owners, Fleetwood, but he's been very careful to pick his next step. And much as we have just talked about there, the relationship between Derek McInnes and Billy Bowie at Kilmarnock, Scott Brown, I think, has got a really good thing going with the guys in charge at Ayr United. I think they're plugging into each other down there, and it's creating a sort of electricity locally. The club feels energised, and if it's moving in the right direction off the park, and Scott Brown, early days, seems to be doing something very similar. There's certainly a reconnection amongst the club and the supporters down there. Levels of excitement. Now, given all that, and given that he was prepared to go to that level to try and work his way up, would Scott Brown sort of leave all that so early into the job? And bear in mind, not so early into the job. He went in there last season. He had a lot of sorting out to do to get himself into the position that he felt he needed to be to make a challenge for promotion to the Premiership. He's done all that kind of hard work. He's kind of sorted out the squad. He's done it because he's got a chairman behind him who was prepared to go the extra mile for him in terms of investment and backing his plans for restructuring that squad. And they now seem to be in a great place. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for me, for Scott Brown now to say, yeah, thanks guys, that's been a great few months. I'm now going to take this one and jump on to potentially a sinking ship at St Johnstone. I think he'd be better served now that he's committed to this, and now that the club is behind him, and with the relationship that he's built down there with the board and with the supporters. I think that would be a pretty hard sell for St Johnstone to say, leave all that behind, come and rescue us. Mm-hmm. And bear in mind as well, again, like any good young manager, if you've managed to get yourself into a position where you feel the club is moving behind you and taking your leadership, that's great. Scott Brown's got a big name. Now, what's the worst thing that could happen to Scott Brown if he's now setting out in this long-term course to become what he would hope be a top manager, is to jump to St Johnstone at this stage, to a club that is in a bit of a mess mid-season, and end up getting relegated? Where does Scott Brown go after relegation with St Johnstone? I tell you where he goes if he takes Ayr United into the Premier League. Just about anywhere he wants.
And one thing, and again, I might be speaking through my postcode here, but I think you could make a strong argument that a successful Ayr might be as big a club as St Johnstone.
Yeah, so that. By the way, it's one great point.
You get Ayr into the Premier League and flying.
It's got a bigger support base.
I'd say they're bigger than St Johnstone.
Aye.
I mean, the stadium needs kind of brought kicking and screaming into the kind of latest century, but
Sales gone in person or not? Jeez, I'm doing well tonight, aren't I?
We'll get you evicted before the show's over.
but in terms of your natural supporter base, I would tend to agree with you there, Swanee.
I think it is. I think they could command bigger crowds in St Johnstone if they get into the Premier League. They're really, there's a lot of initiatives. Listen, I know all clubs do initiatives, so it's not just Ayr United, but there is a real push to get younger fans in the door. I really sense there's a real upturn. But, compared to what it was 2 or 3 years ago, the lift is tremendous in excitement and numbers and where it could go if they got to the Premier League. Listen, I know we're a long way off, getting there. We're only just into the season. There's only been a few games going, but I'm just saying if Ayr United became a Premier League club, I would say they'd be every bit as big as St Johnstone.
And that's why, Swanee, it would be a very difficult decision for Scott Brown to jump horses at this point.
I would say so.